everybody, it's Drybear, and we need to talk about the current drama in the Path of Exile 2 community leading up to the launch in just a couple days now. Path of Exile 2 is the new upcoming ARPG release for grinding gear games, and it is sizing up to be the best game of 2025 by far, and probably going to set ARPG history for being one of the widest and deepest games. Not only do they have depth, but they have breadth and systems, and they put all the things they've learned over the last 10 years of working on Path of Exile 1 into Path of Exile 2 to make it an incredible game. And needless to say, the internet is very excited about this game. We're all hyped and ready to play the game this weekend, starting with December 6th, where the early access will be available. However, over the weekend, we had one of the review versions of the game, a embargo was broken. A full review of the early access version of the game was launched unintentionally early, and that has caused a serious amount of drama to spur up in the PoE2 community. Now, this has caused a lot of different people to be angry for a lot of different reasons, so let's walk through them individually. Obviously, the person or the group that posted this review is a group that does receive a decent amount of hate from the online communities for various reasons. I think a lot of it is deserved. Some of it is just people echoing what they hear, but it is Fextra-Life, a group that runs a wiki and also does a whole bunch of guide content and used to do live stream content as well for games. And through various different situations have received a bit of a notoriety around their content and everything else, as they tend to be the ones that are trying to fast upload information. They tend to get as much information online as fast as possible with as little amount of fact-checking, verification, or vetting the information. So oftentimes their wiki is either incomplete or has some errors in it. And depending on where you're looking, it could have a lot of errors. And so there's a lot of people that have had a negative view of Fextra-Life for this. They also did some shady practices where they had been embedding their live stream into their website, into the wiki, which means that every single page that you visit on the wiki, if you're looking for Elden Ring information on an item or a build, it would open the stream, whether you liked it or not, on your stream, which would cause their stream to super inflate with a lot of viewers. They would often get 10,000 to 20,000 active or viewers on their stream. And with this, they started getting like promotional sponsorships with other companies. People would pay them the money they would normally pay a streamer that has 10 to 20,000 CCU on their view count. And obviously a lot of that was just passive people that were just looking at their wiki, not actually sitting in their chat and engaging with it. So there's a whole bunch of drama around Fextra-Life in general. Now, in general, breaking embargo is a pretty serious deal. Usually, if you are someone who gets early access to something, if you're, someone like my position or in like, games journalism, like IGN, GameSpot, that sort of thing, if you're given something early access and there's an embargo there, typically they either enforce a pretty strict NDA, which means there will be some monetary punishment for breaking embargo, and there could be even more legal action that goes along with it, depending on who you're talking to. If you're talking about companies like FromSoft or Nintendo, breaking those embargoes are pretty serious. But with GGG, they tend to be very friendly and forward-facing with most of their things. But also, there's the downside that if you do break embargo, it tarnishes your reputation as a news outlet and can often get you, blacklisted from getting embargoes or getting early access to things in the future, especially from the company you broke the embargo from, but also other companies if they find out that you're someone who does break embargoes when you're, graciously given something early version. So that's the first issue to be aware of, is just the idea that the information was disseminated way too early and not like an hour. Sometimes media outlets will break embargo by a couple minutes and they'll push their luck and see if they can get an hour ahead of time, because obviously first gets the most views in the biggest case. So if you can get the information out there sooner, you get more views on it. But they broke embargo by a whole week, which means that, PoE early access is coming out this Friday. They broke it by almost an entire week, like 6 days early. They released their full review, which had the campaign progress. It had, their full review of the experience, all of the classes, the builds, everything. So it was a huge spoiler for a lot of people. Now, right after this happened, Path of Exile Grinding Gear Games made an official tweet about this, saying that it was not their fault. They actually took responsibility for it and said there was a miscommunication with Fextra-Life that resulted in a video being posted early, and this was a mistake on our end and is in no way on Fextra-Life. Now, these systems, depending on who you're working with, can be wildly different. If you get early access from a company like Ubisoft, then there's usually a very strict like PDF or doc file that you get, and the embargo times are listed in capital letters in red and highlighted several times all over it, and they're usually very, organized. But if you get kind of a smaller indie company, it may be up to either the media agency you're working with or with the actual developer that's tasked with giving this out. The smaller the company, in some cases, sometimes just like actual core developers, like programmers, will have to take the mantle of sending out these embargoes, depending on how big the team is. So it can be a huge miss-up. There can be a lot of issues with people getting the wrong information. Maybe even the secondary people that work at the agencies have the wrong information. There can be mix-ups all the time. In general, I would say if you're someone who gets these early access often, it's good to just double check on everything, because obviously you get punished when you break it as well. So them breaking it by a whole week and it being GGG's fault is kind of odd. There's certainly some speculation out there that GGG, being the good guy that they are, they have a reputation of just being very fair and like user-friendly and just good-natured Kiwis out there making games. And so some people are speculating that Fextra Life broke this because they obviously have a negative reputation, and that GGG is just trying to, jump on the grenade for them and protect them from the backlash. But it doesn't really make any sense to do that. I don't see GGG even wanting to do that. They didn't even need to comment on this situation. It could have just blown up in Fextra's face for not doing their due diligence to see what the actual embargo time was, and I don't see them doing that in this case. I think it actually was a miscommunication where Fextra just got the wrong date. But realistically, again, having been someone that gets early access to things pretty often and also has to work with a wide range of large companies, like very large conglomerates that do this, as well as indie companies and everything in between, it is kind of on you as the journalist with integrity to say, okay, is this date correct? Can I verify? And also just think about it logically, is this something that I can do? And generally, when I'm given early access to something, I'm pretty stressed about it. If they're like, hey, here's the embargo lifting, I'm like very stressed. Okay, can I post it? Is it okay? That sort of thing. And I think that comes down to just having the integrity to think about when this can go out and when it cannot. And the fact that no one else that got a review copy accidentally launched it a week ahead of time probably means that I don't think Fextra Life was the only one that got the wrong information, but they were probably the only ones that didn't really take the extra steps to verify whether it was actually right or not. So that's the first issue, is the outlet of Fextra Life, the negative connotation revolving them as a wiki developer and just their history and background and all of that, and them breaking embargo by a large amount of time. That's the first issue. The second issue is, I think, a little bit more, related to the game itself, and it's the idea that everyone was under the impression that there were no, early release versions of the game. There's obviously early access versions of the game that included the first 3 acts of the game and were very limited. I was able to play one of these versions about a month ago, which again was just the first few acts of the game, and it was kind of limited on what you could play, the classes that were there, the gems that were available, and it was just like a, hey, here's what we're working on kind of version, but it was nowhere near the final release version that's coming out in a couple days, and so it's kind of just like a, hey, check this out if you'd like to. And this wasn't just given to reviewers. There were a lot of people that signed up for it and got into these closed access versions, and those actually ended as well several weeks ago. The servers went offline and they weren't available anymore because they were going to work on the new version. So everyone was under the impression that no one was getting an early view at the release version. So seeing Fextra Life release a review of the game where they said they had played over 40 hours, they had completed the full campaign, they had done everything on it, was kind of wild and pissed a lot of people off. So GGG said, to clarify, some traditional games media have been given access to a review version of the game. Part of the stipulation that media were given is that this is for review purposes only. They may share their opinions of the game, but are not allowed to produce guide-style content from the version that would spoil the discovery of the game or post unedited playthroughs. They are not playing on the same servers as the early access version. None of the progress will be kept for this version, and in addition, all content they produce is embargoed until the release release of early access on December 6th. So they obviously broke the embargo by about 6 days. And I think that's good reason to be upset in general. If you're someone who is just really excited about the idea of starting again at square one for a Path of Exile game with nothing discovered, nothing figured out, everything's open. And personally for me, when it comes to ARPGs, RPGs, MMOs, grind-based progression games where there's tons of systems to explore, one of my favorite times is when the game first launches and no one knows anything. Everyone's bumping around in the dark, trying things different out, and you can try anything you want without anyone knowing what the actual answer is because it's all kind of up in the air. And so like having things figured out or having people get access to this early is obviously a big thing for a lot of people, but GGG stresses that this was not the early access version of the game, and it's very likely that it was just maybe an improved version of the one we played a couple weeks ago, which was just like, again, the incomplete, unupdated version that they had used for like events and live conventions and stuff like that. Now, there's also kind of an awkward situation here as well, because they say that they are not allowed to produce guide-style content from this version of the game that would spoil discovery of the game or post unedited playthroughs. Yet, obviously, Fextra Life is a wiki developer, and they kind of thrive on game information guide-style content in general, and if you go to pathofexile2.fextralife, you can see that they've already started filling out a large amount of information for this. Now, granted, a lot has been shown online. There's been a lot of reveals from Grinding Gear Games directly, and they could be pulling a lot of that information from the official reveals and putting it into it. And honestly, if I ran a wiki, I would obviously want to just do all my legwork early before the game launched, put as much information onto it as possible, so I get those hits and I can run those ads and actually get the ad revenue as part of it. But there's actually a large amount. I'm not going to click on all of these because some of these, like the skills one has a lot of skills in it. Skill Gems has a very large list in it. Now you could say that maybe they grabbed this from just secondhand information, or by looking at the reveals when they bring up the skill screen, just pausing the video and looking it on there. But there's a large amount of information here overall. They even had a full walkthrough of the campaign of the game that they had recently taken down from this website. And the Path of Exile 2 wiki is not linked on their main page. You just have to enter it manually and go to it. So it's live, it's just not hooked up to their main site. So they have all this information down here as well. So needless to say, there's been a lot of drama going around in the community, first around just Fextra Life and their reputation in general, and people reacting to that, wondering why they even got access at all, whether they're on the list or whatever. I don't really care too much about that personally. It's just kind of squabbling in my case, but I know there's a lot of people that have strong opinions on it, so let me know what your opinion is on Fextra Life gaining access to the game early and what version they have. A lot of people just wondering why there's even an early access version at all, like early access, I guess, early squared access to the early access version. Now, GGG did mention that the reason that they gave out a review copy to sites is because they want to have day one, official reviewers that people rely on to get a vibe for a game that they're going to spend money on. Because the early access for Path of Exile 2 is a buy-in early access, you have to pay for it. They wanted to have their review outlets have their opinion on the site for review purposes, so the people that rely on reviewers to decide whether they're going to spend money will be able to do so, and that's why they did it. But a lot of people are wondering why they even have a review copy of the game that they send out anyways, if they're trying to avoid spoilers and that sort of thing. But let me know what you think about this and the situation on the overall game. I think Path of Exile 2 is complicated enough that I wouldn't really worry about like Fextra Life ruining that for a lot of people. I don't think one creator is even capable of ruining Path of Exile 2 for everybody as far as the systems go, because it's just going to take too much for one person to do. But they obviously could spoil the campaign, they could spoil the experience, or spoil some of the discovery as well if they were careless about how they shared that information. But let me know what you think. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.